Our first story is about the bravery of a man named Abram, the same man who later is known as Abraham. It begins in a land filled with vast plains and towering hills. There lived two relatives, Abram and Lot. Abram was the uncle of Lot and a kind man who lived in the hills, and Lot lived in the lush plains near a city called Sodom. One day, a big battle happened. 4 powerful kings fought against the 5 kings of the plains, including the king of Sodom, where Lot lived. The kings from the plains lost, and the winners took many things and people captive from Sodom and Gomorrah, including Lot. One man escaped and went and found Abram. When Abram heard that Lot was taken away, he knew he had to help. He gathered 318 of his servants and friends and set off on a great adventure to save Lot. They traveled at night, being super quiet and sneaky. Under the starry sky, Abram and his friends surprised the bad kings and their soldiers. They were very brave and fought hard. Because they were smart and worked together, they won the battle and rescued Lot and all the other people who had been taken. After this exciting rescue, the king of Sodom wanted to pay Abram by giving him all of the goods they had recovered. But Abram refused and gave God the glory. So Abram became a hero for saving Lot and showed that being brave and doing the right thing is important. It also reminded everyone that when with God, they can do great things. And this adventure of Abram and Lot became a story told for many, many years. Our next story is about Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. A long time ago, in a land far away, there was a brave man named Joshua. He was chosen by God to lead the Israelites, a group of people who had been wandering in the desert for a very long time. They were waiting for the time when they were allowed to enter that special land that God had promised them. Joshua was a strong and wise leader. He trusted God and followed his instructions. One day, God told Joshua,
"Cross the river Jordan and enter into the promised land."
But there was a problem. The river was very wide and flowing fast. How would they get across? Joshua did not worry. He knew that with God's help, anything was possible. He instructed the priests to carry a special chest called the Ark of the Covenant and step into the river. As soon as their feet touched the water, something miraculous happened. The water stopped flowing and the riverbed became dry. The Israelites walked across on dry ground, amazed and thankful for this miracle. After crossing the river, Joshua sent 2 spies into the land. They found there was a city called Jericho. The spies returned and said,
"Jericho has huge walls around it, but the people there, they are afraid of us."
Then God gave Joshua a special plan. For 6 days, they were to march around the city once each day, carrying the ark and staying silent. Then on the 7th day, they were to march around 7 times and then shout with all their might. Joshua and the Israelites did exactly as God instructed. On the 7th day, after marching around the city 7 times, they shouted loudly. Suddenly, the walls of Jericho fell down flat. The Israelites were able to take the city, and it was a great victory. This amazing adventure showed that with faith in God and courage in their hearts, the Israelites could overcome any obstacle. Joshua became a great hero, remembered for his trust in God and brave leadership. And the Israelites learned an important lesson, that with God on their side, they could do amazing things, and remembered to trust and follow God. The story of Rehoboam. In Bible times, a long time ago, there lived a young prince named Rehoboam. He was the son of King Solomon, the wisest king who ever ruled. Rehoboam grew up in the grand palace of Jerusalem, surrounded by treasures and wisdom that his father had collected from all corners of the earth. As time passed, King Solomon's reign came to an end, and it was Rehoboam's turn to wear the crown. On the day of his coronation, I can imagine people from every tribe in the kingdom gathered to see their new king. They had high hopes that Rehoboam would be a wise and fair ruler, just like his father. However, Rehoboam faced his first challenge sooner than he expected. The people of the kingdom, led by a man named Jeroboam, came to him with a request. They had worked hard under Solomon, building magnificent buildings and cities, and now they asked Rehoboam to make their burdens lighter. Rehoboam, unsure of what to do, sought the advice of the elders who had served his father. They advised him to listen to the people's request and serve them kindly, promising that this would make the people loyal to him forever. But Rehoboam also turned to his young friends for counsel, and they gave him very different advice. They told him to show his strength as king and to make the people's work even harder than before. In a moment that would change the course of history, Rehoboam decided to follow his young friend's advice. When the people heard this, they were deeply disappointed and angry. They had hoped for a king who would be a protector and a guide, but instead, they felt ignored and oppressed. This decision led to a great divide. 10 of the 12 tribes refused to accept Rehoboam as their king and followed Jeroboam, forming their own kingdom. Only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam. Rehoboam's reign was marked by this division, and it taught him a hard lesson about leadership. He learned that wisdom is not just about knowledge, but about listening to others, understanding their needs, and leading with kindness and compassion. The story of Rehoboam is a timeless tale that teaches us the importance of wise counsel, the value of listening to others, and the consequences of our choices. It reminds us that true leadership is about serving others and bringing people together, not driving them apart. And so, Rehoboam's story, a blend of choices and challenges, continues to be told, teaching each new generation the lessons learned from a king who faced the consequences of not listening to wise counsel. Noah and the Ark. A long time ago, there lived a man named Noah. Noah was a good and faithful man who always tried to do what was right. The world around him, however, had become filled with wickedness and evil deeds. People had forgotten to be kind to each other, and worst of all, forgotten to obey God. God saw the state of the world and decided that a fresh start was needed. But because Noah was such a good man, Noah found grace in the sight of God. God decided to save Noah, his family, and the animals from the coming flood that would cleanse the earth. God spoke to Noah, telling him to build a huge boat called an ark. This was no ordinary boat. It was to be big enough to hold Noah's family and 2 of every kind of animal on the earth, 1 male and 1 female. Noah listened carefully to God's instructions, and even though building the ark was a huge task, he followed God's instruction completely. Noah worked hard, and after many years, the ark was finally complete. Just as he finished, God gave Noah a 7-day notice. On that 7th day, the skies grew dark and rain began to fall. It wasn't just any rain. Water fell from the sky, and the ground opened up, and fountains of water spewed out. It was the beginning of a great flood that would cover the entire earth. That great flood covered the highest mountain. Noah, his family, they had gathered food and supplies, enough to last them for the entire time they would be on the ark. Just before it began to rain, God closed the door of the ark. After 40 days and 40 nights, the rain stopped, but the water covered the earth for many more months. Noah and his family took care of the animals, and they all waited patiently for the water to go down. Finally, the ark had rested on the mountains of Ararat. Noah sent out a raven to see if there was any dry land. Then he sent a dove. It came back because it couldn't find anywhere to land. The second time, the dove returned with an olive leaf in its beak, showing that the water was going down and plants were growing again. The third time, the dove didn't return, which meant it had found a place to live on dry land. At last, God told Noah that it was safe to leave the ark. Noah, his family, and all the animals left the ark and stepped onto dry land. They were grateful to be alive and promised to take care of the earth and each other. To show his promise never to flood the whole earth again, God put a rainbow in the sky. It was a sign of his covenant with Noah, his descendants, and all living creatures. Noah and his family started a new life, and the earth was filled with life once more. And so, every time we see a rainbow, we can remember the story of Noah and the ark and the promise that was made by God. It's a story of faith, obedience, and hope. The story of Saul and the Damascus Road. A long time ago, in a land far away, there was a man named Saul. Saul lived in a time when many people were learning about Jesus and his teachings of love and kindness. But Saul didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. In fact, he thought Jesus was wrong, and he wanted to stop anyone who followed Jesus. Saul was very determined and even got permission to go to a city called Damascus to find people who followed Jesus and take them away to be punished. One sunny day, Saul and his friends set out on the long road to Damascus. They traveled and talked, sure of their mission. But as they got closer to the city, something incredible happened. Suddenly, a bright light from heaven shone all around Saul. It was so bright that Saul couldn't see anything. He fell to the ground in shock. Then Saul heard a voice saying,
Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me?
Saul was scared and confused. He asked, Who art thou, Lord? The voice replied, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. But when he opened his eyes, he couldn't see anything. He was blind. So his friends had to lead him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days, Saul couldn't see, wondering why this had happened to him. But God had a plan for Saul. In Damascus, there was a man named Ananias who loved Jesus very much. God spoke to Ananias in a vision and told him to go to the house where Saul was staying. God told Ananias that Saul was praying and that he had seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming and placing his hands on him to restore his sight. Ananias was afraid at first because he knew Saul had been hurting people who followed Jesus. But God told Ananias that Saul was chosen to tell many people about Jesus, including kings and the children of Israel. So Ananias went to Saul, placed his hands on him, and said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. Saul was baptized, and he started to eat and regain his strength. From that day on, Saul became a new person. He even got a name change to Paul. Paul became one of the greatest followers of Jesus. He traveled far and wide, telling people about Jesus and writing letters that are still read today in the Bible. The Story of Ruth and Boaz. This story begins in the city of Bethlehem. There was a woman named Naomi. She and her husband had 2 sons. One day, there was no food left in Bethlehem, so they moved to the land of Moab. But sadly, her husband died. Her sons married 2 local girls, Ruth and Orpah. After some years, her sons also passed away, leaving Naomi and her daughters-in-law alone. Naomi decided to return to her homeland in Bethlehem and told Ruth and Orpah to stay in Moab with their families. Orpah stayed, but Ruth loved Naomi very much and insisted on going with her. Ruth said, Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. When they arrived in Bethlehem, it was the time of the barley harvest. Ruth went to a field to pick up leftover grains so they could eat. The field belonged to a kind man named Boaz, who was related to Naomi's husband. Boaz noticed Ruth's hard work and kindness towards Naomi. He told his workers to leave extra grain for her to gather. Boaz admired Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and her strong character. Naomi was happy to see Ruth being taken care of and thought of a plan. She knew Boaz was a relative and could marry Ruth. Naomi told Ruth what to do, and Ruth went to Boaz at night, laying at his feet to show she was willing to be his wife. Boaz was honored by Ruth's request, but knew that there was another relative who had the first right to marry her. The next day, Boaz met with this relative and the town elders. The other relative could not marry Ruth, so Boaz happily agreed to marry her. Boaz and Ruth's wedding was a joyful celebration. They soon had a baby boy named Obed, who grew up to be the grandfather of King David. Ruth, who chose to follow Naomi and her God, became an important part of God's plan and is remembered for her faithfulness and love.